I think the main idea of the first two readings we heard today is future, hope, newness, freshness in our spiritual life. The first reading was talking about something new is coming. Can you hear it? Can you perceive it? It's a very powerful expression. Can you perceive that something is coming, something new is growing among us? Paul was talking about the goal. So this is a very this is a very common metaphor in Paul's letters, to look at the goal. Queen and myself, we like this image of the runner looking at the goal. And yesterday you had here the rock marathon in Washington. There was a big mess in traffic and all that. I was complaining, I was pretending to complain, but I am in the other side of the marathon, so I understood very well the reason. So this is a very nice image to explain our spiritual life. We are tired, but we keep on running, we keep on walking, we go ahead, looking at the goal that sometimes seems to be so far away, but we, by faith, we know that it's there, and that someone is waiting for us. We are in Easter time, and usually in Easter we talk about penance and conversion and traditional life and all that, and of course this is the main message. We have to prepare ourselves for Easter, and that's very important. But Lent is also a time of hope, and sometimes we forget this. It seems Lent is a time of sadness. I mean, we never say that, but sometimes we feel that, it's not a joyful time in the life of the church. And I think it's a joyful time. It's a time of hope. We are waiting something. We are expecting something. Something new is coming. Something new is among us. As you know, we have lived very important events in the church in the last few weeks. Very important events. Pope Benedict XVI resigned. In Rome, it's a terrible situation because you don't know which word you have to use, because it was such an unexpected situation, and so the canonical terminology was very complicated. But we are in family, we can talk that way. Benedict XVI resigned, and Pope Francis, in his first days of pontificate, he's been talking a lot about hope. We need hope. We have to be men and women of hope. This has been the great message we have received from the church these days. The other day in Rome, I heard this conversation. Someone said, "Oh, what a sad situation, what a strange situation. The Pope resigned. We are orphans in the church. The church is orphan." And someone who was listening to that said, "Did God die?" No. We cannot be orphans. This is the great message of Benedict XVI, the last 2 weeks of his pontificate. I think the messages were so powerful, the talks he gave the last days were very powerful. He always was underlying the church is based on Christ, not on me. There is a pope today and there is a new pope tomorrow, and I'm not so important. He was very humble, he was very simple. He didn't pretend to have a show, to say goodbye or whatever. In a very simple way, in a very smooth way, he left the pontificate, and he was opening a new time in the life of the church. So I think Pope Benedict and Pope Francis have been inviting us to live in hope. And this is a powerful and important and essential message for us Christians in our spiritual life, especially in this time of Lent. And the second idea, the second feeling I want to share with you today is forgiveness. I'm not going to explain the gospel. You've heard this gospel many times, and it's a very powerful and a very touching behavior of Christ, and it was very shocking for the people who were there around. I'm not going to talk about that. You know, we are talking about forgiveness, about reconciliation. I just want to underline that to understand that dynamic of forgiveness and reconciliation, we have to get into another dimension. If we are in the legal discussion, we cannot get out from that. We were talking about the law, and this is very common in the gospel. The Pharisees, the masters of the law, were trying to put him in trouble, and so they made him a cunning and nasty question. So if he says, yes, the problem is here. If he says no, the problem is there. So they were trying to put him in trouble. But Jesus always put the question in another dimension, rises the question in another dimension, in the dimension of love and the dimension of the good news of the gospel. We have to do something like that. If we are not able to look further, if we are not able to look beyond these human, earthly, and sometimes poor considerations, we cannot join the dynamic of forgiveness. Probably you have problems, not many hope, but you have problems in your families, we have problems in our communities, and human life is conflict. That's normal. Sometimes we are in a good time, sometimes we are in a very tense period of our lives, but in any case, we cannot avoid conflict. Conflict is human. So to get out of that conflict, we have to look beyond. We have to join in another dimension. And that's conversion. That's the great message of Lent. We have to be able to look further, to look in another way of understanding, in another way of analyzing human things. Let me tell you something about our visitation in the Southwest Commissariat. We were in Tucson. Hispanic, we used to say Tucson, but in good English is Tucson. So we were there in Tucson, and the Carmelites were taking us to visit the city and the Carmelite communities and all that, took us to the mountains. It's in the midst of the desert. It's a wonderful place with nice mountains surrounding the city. And as you know, Tucson is surrounded by the saguaro desert, so a lot of cacti, strong and very, very big cacti, very dangerous cacti, you cannot go closer. So when we went to the mountains, up to the mountains, that Carmelite said to us, when you go higher than a certain point, there are not more saguaros, there are not more cacti, there are nicer trees, I mean pines and other trees, since you go up, you don't find more saguaros. And I said to myself, this is a nice metaphor also for our spiritual life. When you go a little bit higher of a certain point, there are no more cacti. We have many cacti in our lives, many dangerous situations, we are aggressive, we see a problem in everything and all that. But if we are able to go a little bit further, if we are able to go a little bit higher of that, there are no more cacti, everything changes in our life. I'm very naive, but I know that human life is very complicated. It's not so easy that we cannot take a car and go to the mountains and everything is solved. I mean, the problems are there, and the problems remain and all that. But Lent sends us a message of changing our mind, of changing our point of view, of being able to look at ourselves, to look at our neighbor in another way as Jesus did in the gospel. I think this is also important in our Carmelite charism, because as you remember in the chapter 15 of our rule, we are told that on Sunday, if it is possible, we have to meet and we have to correct each other with charity. Caritate media corrigantur, we have to correct each other with charity. On Sunday, I mean, it's not a sociological dynamic or just psychological dynamic, it's something about faith, it's something about the risen Lord. So on Sunday, in this important spiritual and liturgical moment, you can and you have to correct each other, you have to forgive each other, you have to get into a dynamic of reconciliation. The world, our world, is quite needed of reconciliation. We see that in a familiar level, in a social level, in a political level, in an international level. So I think we Christians, we Catholics, we Carmelites, we have to be signs and builders of reconciliation in our world. I invite you to change your mind. I invite you to get in a dynamic of conversion. I invite you to look also further so that we can build that reconciliation for the people of God.